What happens when our government tells me to stay home for months because of a virus that kills less than 1 out of every 500 people that get it? What happens is I find new ways to entertain myself, like a video camera. Anyway, my name is Lou Webb. I live in southwestern Colorado, and I consider myself a common sense patriot. And as I've watched our country explode over the last 5 weeks or so, sparked by the despicable killing of George Floyd, and heard the non-stop rhetoric in the aftermath, quite frankly, I'm dumbfounded. Some of what's being said sounds reasonable. Some is unreasonable. And some is so far off base, it's seemingly from another galaxy, while some is just ignorant. And oh yeah, the idea of doing away with the police is simply insane. That will be far more devastating to the law-abiding residents of lower-income black communities than folks can imagine. It will allow criminals to run rampant and literally rule those areas. In any case, not a single thing I've heard proposed will fix the problem long-term. Not one. But there is an answer. Look, we've heard a million times before. You can't fix a problem until you first admit to having a problem. Alcoholics, drug addicts, gambling addicts, wife beaters, etc., must first recognize and admit to the problem before they can do anything successful and long-term about it. But the key is the real issue must be accurately identified, or all the effort to rectify it will be wasted. If you're a drunk, but you identify your major life problem as being your wife, and your fix is to get rid of her, you're going to end up a single guy living in a shabby apartment with half your stuff, or less. And though she may or may not have been a good wife, you're still going to be a drunk. Now first, I want to establish right up front what Derek Chauvin did was inexcusable. I had a chance to watch the video, the extended version, and I am still haunted by what I saw and heard. I got seething mad watching what that asshole Chauvin did, and what his fellow officer, Do Tao, didn't do. And look, it makes no difference if Floyd was an axe murderer or up for sainthood. That cop unlawfully took his life. Suffocating to death a handcuffed, prostrate man who is absolutely no threat while he's begging you to let him breathe, criminal or not, is murder. Period. So suffice to say that if they hang Chauvin, or better yet, suffocate his ass, and put Tao in a dungeon and throw away the key, I'm good with that. Now to the problem, the real problem. Well, actually, let's first take a look at what the real problem isn't. It isn't lack of training for police. It isn't lack of pre-employment psychological evaluations. And it isn't lack of funding. It isn't poor leadership in various law enforcement agencies. And it isn't an issue of some barrels of cops have a bad apple or two. It isn't black males in big cities being involved in criminal activities at a higher rate than other groups of men. And it isn't racism. Now don't get mad and turn this off because you didn't like the list of what the real problem isn't. Because I didn't say that any of those things aren't problems. Because to one degree or another they are. None of them, though, is the real problem. The real problem is that we, the people, no longer have any trust in the justice process or equal application of our laws. It's really just that simple. Folks, this goes way back to the founding of this nation and how we have allowed ourselves to be moved away from our founding principles to the bastardized and unrecognizable mess we have today. And though that translates to myriad problems throughout our country, this presentation only focuses on our justice system. First, the United States of America was not founded as a democracy to be governed by the whim of the people. It was founded as a republic to be governed by law. If you were caught breaking the law, justice was to be swift and severe. Common sense telling you that was to be a deterrent to breaking the law in the first place. Or for a second time, if you experienced the justice system once and were considering trying your luck breaking law again. If you were arrested, you were to be tried pretty quickly by a jury of your peers who would hear the case and evidence presented by the prosecution and the defense, and they would then, in their best collective judgment, render a decision as to your guilt or innocence. If the jury decided you were innocent, off into the sunset you went. If the jury of your peers found you guilty, the judge would determine a sentence, and off to pay your fine, jail, prison, or the gallows you went. And that, folks, was the end of that. Next, penalties for breaking the law were severe, and rehabilitation was accomplished by the fact that the penalty sucked so bad that you didn't want to experience it again. In comparison, we had relatively few laws back then. They were pretty much don't steal other people's stuff, don't hurt or damage other folks, don't kill someone outside of war or defense of your life or property, and don't commit treason against your country. The point here is that what our founders designed was pretty dadgum simple, efficient, and effective. Enter the bleeding heart liberals, bitching for decades that incarceration is cruel and unusual punishment, and that convicted criminals have a right to a reasonably nice life while imprisoned. They changed the penal system to be far too cush. Now don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to go to prison. But by the same token, it doesn't look that bad, other than you don't have the freedom to leave. You get 3 square meals, clean water, a bed to sleep in, and a roof over your head. You have entertainment and recreational options, as well as communication and online options. In essence, there are tens of millions of free human beings all over the world who have never committed a crime, but whose lives are far less comfortable and healthy and fun than convicted criminals here in America. Use common sense, folks. If prison wasn't fairly easy, why do so many criminals keep offending and going back to prison time and time again? Why? Because first, they have a criminal mentality. And second, because doing time just isn't that hard. Damn, it's supposed to be hard to be incarcerated. I don't mean that anyone is supposed to be tortured or mistreated, but you're incarcerated in the first place because of personal choices you made. Look, the human experience is that we're supposed to reap the rewards of good choices and suffer the consequences of bad ones. Other than the meeting of basic human needs, prison should be void of any, for lack of a better term, creature comforts or fun. If you chose the criminal behavior that landed you in prison in the first place, then you chose to risk losing many of your rights and freedoms. I personally believe we could have much shorter prison terms, on average, if the time spent in prison was zero fun. Again, the rehabilitation being that you never want to have to experience that again, so you shape your criminal ass up. We must get back to the original plan, which was to govern by the swift application of fair and reasonable laws. But here's the missing link. They must be applied equally to all of we the people. Let me repeat that. They must be applied the same in every case to everyone. They must be applied equally if you're black, brown, white, yellow, or purple and orange polka dotted. They must be applied equally to the rich and to the poor and to the middle class. They must be applied equally to male and female and to straight and LGBT. They must be applied equally to Democrats and Republicans and independents. They must be applied equally to celebrities and unknowns and politicians and average citizens alike. And they must be applied equally to law enforcement and civilians. There is a reason the figure of the lady who is holding the scales of justice is blindfolded. Justice is supposed to be blind to all of the above and to see only the facts. The bottom line is the law must be applied equally, period. Can you imagine how much less law breaking there would be just by politicians and celebrities and wealthy folks if they knew that getting caught meant zero preferential treatment in court and guaranteed hard time in prison? Imagine how many less repeat offenders of all kinds there would be if they knew that the second time around they would enjoy a guarantee of triple the term of their first sentence with no chance of parole. What if all prison time was 23 hours a day in a cell with no entertainment, no internet access, books only, and the only exercise would be calisthenics and walking or running with no weightlifting to create bulked up super crooks? What if all the food was high quality and healthy, but served with no seasoning or extra flavor? I guarantee crime rates would go down. Anyway, the only way to fix this problem of citizen law enforcement disconnect in the long term is to generate trust in the legal system by we the people. All of we the people. Because we just don't believe justice is applied equally in this country. And we don't believe it because it isn't. So now the question is, how do we do that? How do we get folks to have trust in the system? Well, to answer that question, we must first understand how we got here. But it looks like I got a bit long-winded, so I'll record that in a second video. So those of you that are further interested can watch if you'd like. I'm Lou, a common sense patriot, and Godspeed and happy 4th of July to all of you.